I woke up to knocking at 12:47 a.m. on a freezing February night in Salem, Oregon. When I opened my door, I found my daughter Cassidy standing on my porch with 4 children, my grandchildren, clustered behind her like refugees. Owen, 12, the twins, Lily and Noah, 9, and 5-year-old Emma, clutching a stuffed elephant and crying. An Uber idled at the curb. Cassidy's face was stone. "I need you to take them for 2 months," she said flatly. "I can't do this anymore. I need a break." Before I could protest, before I could ask what the hell was happening, she kissed each child's forehead without meeting their eyes, slid into that car, and disappeared down my quiet street. Just like that. No discussion, no warning, just gone. I stood there at 58 years old, 3 years widowed, staring at 4 pairs of terrified eyes waiting for me to tell them everything would be okay, but I had no idea if it would be. The first week was survival mode. I enrolled them in schools they'd never attended. I learned that Emma wet the bed, that Lily's anxiety made her wash her hands until they bled, that Noah had stopped speaking entirely since his father abandoned them 2 years ago, that Owen was failing 3 classes and carrying rage like a weight that would crush him. I tried calling Cassidy. She blocked my number. I tried texting. No response. Then I found her Instagram. There she was, posting from a resort in Cancun. Cocktails and sunsets. Captions about self-care and finding herself. Not a single mention of the 4 children she dumped on my doorstep in the middle of the night. While she was doing yoga on the beach, I was holding Emma through nightmares at 2 a.m. While she posted about choosing yourself, I was bandaging Lily's raw, bleeding hands. While she found her inner peace, Owen asked me 3 times a day when his mother was coming back, and each time I had no answer that didn't sound like another lie. By week 2, I was drowning. I'd canceled my life, my library volunteer shift, my book club, my peaceful routines in this Victorian house my late husband Daniel and I had restored together. Everything I'd built after his death was erased, replaced by homework battles and school pickups and 4 traumatized children who deserved better than this. That's when I made a decision. I logged into the joint bank account I'd kept with Cassidy since Daniel died. The account I'd been quietly depositing money into each month, my pension, rental income, as a safety net for her and the kids. $23,047 sat there, money she didn't know about. I transferred every dollar into a new account in my name only. Then I called the bank and froze her debit card. 2 days later, my phone exploded. 15 missed calls from a Mexican number. Then the texts. "What the hell did you do?" My card was declined at dinner, at the hotel. Do you know how embarrassing? I let her panic. Let her feel a fraction of what her children had been feeling. Then I called her back. "You blocked the cards," she said, voice shrill with fury. "I'm in another country. How am I supposed to—" "You're a grown woman," I interrupted, my voice steady despite my shaking hands. "Figure it out. That's my money too." "Actually, it's not. It's my money that I was saving for your children's needs. But you're not taking care of your children. You're posting sunset photos while Emma cries herself to sleep every night asking why mommy left." The fight that followed was the most brutal conversation I'd ever had with my daughter. She screamed that I was controlling her, that I'd always judged her choices, that I didn't understand what it was like to drown as a single mother. I told her I was drowning too, that her son thought he was unlovable because both his parents had abandoned him, that her daughter was hurting herself from anxiety, that her 5-year-old couldn't make it through a night without wetting the bed from fear. "Then come home," I said. "Come home to your children." "I can't. Not yet. Please don't make me." "I can't make you do anything, but I can stop funding your escape while 4 kids suffer." She told me she hated me. I told her that was fine, but she needed to figure her shit out and come home anyway. She hung up. Now I'm sitting in my dead husband's rocking chair at 3 a.m., watching my quiet street, wondering if I just destroyed the last bridge between us, wondering if I did the right thing or if I just made everything worse, wondering if my daughter will ever forgive me for forcing her hand, but mostly wondering if she'll come back. And if she does, whether her children, my grandchildren, who I've fallen in love with despite the chaos they've brought into my carefully ordered life, will ever be able to trust her again. Because I learned something in these desperate weeks. Sometimes love isn't patience and sacrifice. Sometimes love is drawing a hard line and saying no more. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to catch someone while they keep jumping. Sometimes you have to let them hit bottom, even when that person is your own daughter. even when you're not sure either of you will survive the fall. I was dreaming about Daniel again when the knocking started. In the dream, we were back at Cannon Beach, the summer before he died. The one where he'd insisted on flying that ridiculous dragon kite despite the wind warnings, and it had tangled in a shore pine so badly we'd had to leave it there, laughing until our sides hurt. In the dream, his hand was warm in mine, and the Oregon coast stretched endless and golden, and nothing hurt yet. Then the knocking. At first, I thought it was part of the dream, some intrusive sound my subconscious was weaving into the narrative, but it persisted, sharp and insistent, and I surfaced into consciousness like someone breaking through ice. The red numbers on my bedside clock read 12:47. My heart kicked into my throat. Nobody knocks at 12:47 a.m. with good news. I grabbed my bathrobe, the faded blue terry cloth one Daniel used to tease me about, saying it made me look like a retired boxer, and stumbled down the stairs. My left knee, which had been bothering me since I'd overdone it in the garden last week, protested each step. The house creaked around me, all the familiar sounds amplified by darkness and adrenaline. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked like a countdown. Through the frosted glass panels flanking my front door, I could make out shapes, multiple shapes. My mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. Police officers with terrible news, neighbors with an emergency, Cassidy in trouble. I flicked on the porch light and opened the door. Cassidy stood there, but not the Cassidy I knew. This version of my daughter wore a fixed expression somewhere between determination and desperation. Her auburn hair pulled into a severe ponytail that made her look harder than her 32 years. Behind her, clustered like refugees, were my 4 grandchildren. Owen, 12, stood tallest, his shoulders hunched in that way teenage boys do when they're trying to disappear into themselves. He wore his favorite Timbers jersey, the green one with the number 11, and clutched a backpack covered in duct tape patches. His eyes, Daniel's eyes, wouldn't meet mine. The twins, Lily and Noah, 9 years old and heartbreakingly identical in their matching dinosaur pajamas, stood pressed against each other like 2 halves of a broken whole. Lily held her stuffed elephant, Mr. Trunks, against her chest like a shield. Noah's face was blank in that unsettling way he'd developed since Marcus left, present but not really there, like someone had turned down his volume. And Emma, 5-year-old Emma with her wild blonde curls and her mother's green eyes, clutching a worn copy of Where the Wild Things Are and a pink backpack shaped like a unicorn. Her lower lip trembled. Behind them, idling at the curb, an Uber driver sat illuminated by his phone screen, clearly waiting. "Mom," Cassidy said, and her voice had that rehearsed quality that made my stomach drop. "I need you to take them for 2 months." The words didn't make sense. I stared at her, then at the children, then back at her. "What are you? It's almost 1 a.m. What's happening? Is everything okay?" "No, everything's not okay." She said it matter-of-factly, like she was commenting on the weather. "I can't do this anymore. I need a break. A real one. Not a weekend or a few days. I need actual time to figure out who I am outside of being their mother." The cold February air bit through my bathrobe. From somewhere down Cottage Street, a dog barked. The maple trees that lined my block swayed, their bare branches creating moving shadows under the streetlights. "Cassidy, you can't just..." "I already did." She turned to the children, and I watched something crack in her careful composure. She knelt down, kissed Emma's forehead, then Lily's, then Noah's. Owen stepped back before she could reach him. "Be good for Grandma," she told them, her voice wavering. "I love you. I'll call soon." Emma started crying, a hiccuping sob that broke something in my chest. "Mommy, don't go. Please don't go." "I have to, baby. Grandma will take care of you. Cassidy Ann Holloway, you stop this right now." I used her full name, the one that used to make her freeze as a child. "We need to talk about this." "You can't just..." But she was already standing, already backing away toward the Uber. "I'm sorry, Mom. I know this is sudden, but if I don't do this now, I'm going to break completely. I'll send their school information and medical records tomorrow." "Where are you even going?" "Away. I need to be away." And then she was sliding into the back seat of that Uber, closing the door, and the car was pulling away from the curb. I stood there frozen, 4 children clustered on my porch, watching the taillights disappear down my quiet residential street, the same street where Cassidy had learned to ride a bike, where we'd drawn hopscotch squares in colored chalk every summer, where Daniel had built her that elaborate tree fort in the old oak that the new owners had cut down last year. Emma's crying intensified. She dropped her book and wrapped her arms around my leg, burying her face in my bathrobe. I want mommy. I want to go home. I looked down at 4 pairs of eyes, confused, scared, angry, resigned, and felt the weight of my daughter's abandonment settle onto my shoulders like a physical thing. Owen's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. Lily had started her hand-washing motion, rubbing her palms together anxiously even though they were dry. Noah stared at nothing. "Okay," I heard myself say, though I had no idea what I was doing or how I would manage this. "Okay, let's get you inside. It's freezing out here." I ushered them into my living room, the one Daniel and I had spent 2 years renovating, with its original crown molding and the built-in bookshelves we'd painted sage green. The children stood in a cluster on my Persian rug, a wedding gift from Daniel's mother, looking displaced and small. Their backpacks and overnight bags formed a pile by the door that somehow made this entire nightmare feel more real. "Have you eaten?" I asked, because that's what you ask children, even when the world has just tilted sideways. Owen shook his head. "We had Taco Bell for dinner, at like 6 hours ago. Are you hungry now?" Silence. Then Emma nodded, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. I moved into autopilot, the same mode I'd existed in for months after Daniel died, when getting through each moment required turning off the part of my brain that asked questions like why and how will I survive this. I led them to my kitchen, the heart of this old house with its vintage O'Keefe and Merritt stove and the farmhouse table Daniel had found at an estate sale in Portland. I pulled out milk and bread and peanut butter. I made sandwiches. I found a bag of Oreos I'd bought for book club last week. I set out everything on the table and told them to eat. Owen ate mechanically, staring at the salt and pepper shakers Daniel had carved from driftwood. The twins picked at their food. Emma ate 2 bites of sandwich and 3 Oreos, then laid her head on the table. "I'm tired, Grandma," she whispered. "I know, sweetheart." But I didn't have beds ready. I hadn't prepared for this because how could anyone prepare for this? I looked at the clock on the microwave. 1:23 a.m. I'd been awake for exactly 36 minutes, and my entire life had been rearranged. "Okay, new plan," I said, forcing brightness into my voice. "We're going to have a sleepover in the living room. Like camping, but warmer. How does that sound?" No response. They were too tired, too confused, too abandoned to muster enthusiasm for makeshift adventures. I spent the next 40 minutes gathering every blanket, pillow, and sleeping bag I could find. I pulled spare linens from the hall closet. I dragged the cushions off my sofa. I created 4 separate sleeping spaces on my living room floor, each one as comfortable as I could manage. Owen helped silently, his face carefully neutral. The twins moved like ghosts. Emma clung to my leg the entire time, making everything take twice as long. By 2:15, they were all lying down. I'd found an old nightlight in the shape of a crescent moon, Cassidy's nightlight from when she was small, and plugged it in. The soft glow cast everything in amber. "Grandma?" Emma's voice was small in the darkness. "Yes, baby. When is Mommy coming back?" I sat down on the floor between Emma and the twins, my knees protesting. "I don't know exactly. But you're safe here. I promise you're safe." "She left us," Owen said from his corner, his voice flat and adult. "She just left us like we're nothing." "That's not true," I started, but I didn't know how to finish that sentence. Because hadn't she? Hadn't my daughter just dropped her children off like unwanted luggage? "Dad left too," Owen continued, still in that terrible monotone. "So I guess we're just really easy to leave." My heart cracked. "Owen, it's fine. Whatever. Can we just go to sleep?" I wanted to say something wise and comforting, something that would make sense of the senseless. But I was a 58-year-old widow who'd been woken up at midnight and handed 4 children, and I had no wisdom left. So I just said, "Okay, we'll figure everything out in the morning. Just rest now." I stayed there on the floor until their breathing evened out. Emma fell asleep first, one hand still clutching Mr. Trunks. Then the twins, pressed close together even in sleep. Owen took longest, and I saw him wipe his eyes several times before he finally gave in to exhaustion. When I was certain they were all asleep, I pulled myself up, my knee screaming, my back aching, and walked into my kitchen. I stood at the sink and looked out at my backyard, barely visible in the darkness. The rose garden I'd neglected, the fence that needed painting, the bird feeder Daniel had hung that I kept meaning to take down but couldn't bring myself to. I picked up my phone and called Cassidy. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I sent a text. "Call me immediately. We need to talk about this." No response. I tried again. "Cassidy, I'm serious. You can't do this. Nothing. I stood there in my dark kitchen, phone in hand, and let myself feel the full weight of what had just happened. My daughter had abandoned her children. My grandchildren were asleep on my living room floor, traumatized and confused. And I, who had finally begun to find peace in my quiet, structured life after Daniel's death, was now responsible for 4 young lives I had no idea how to manage. I didn't cry. I was too shocked to cry. Instead, I did what I always did in crisis. I made a list. I pulled out a notepad, the one Daniel used to use for his woodworking project plans, and started writing. Tomorrow. Get school information. Find out about medical records, allergies, medications, buy groceries, kid food, what do kids eat, set up actual bedrooms, cancel library shift, call Patricia about missing book club. The list went on. Each item felt overwhelming. Together, they felt impossible. At 3:47 a.m., I finally allowed myself to sit in Daniel's rocking chair on the front porch, wrapped in an old quilt. The temperature had dropped into the 30s, but I needed the shock of cold air. I needed to feel something other than this numb disbelief. The street was silent except for the wind moving through the maple trees. The scent of coffee from Crescent Moon Bakery hadn't started yet. That came around 5, when Brian arrived to start the first batch of French roast. Everything was suspended in that strange liminal space between night and morning, when the world holds its breath. I thought about Cassidy as a child. The way she used to wake me up at dawn to show me spider webs covered in dew, convinced they were made of magic. The way she'd insisted on wearing her Belle costume to the grocery store every day for 6 months when she was 4. The way she'd cried for a week when her hamster died. And Daniel had held this elaborate funeral in our backyard, complete with a tiny cross he'd made from popsicle sticks. Where had that child gone? When had my bright, sensitive daughter turned into someone who could walk away from her own children in the middle of the night? But even as I asked myself that question, I knew it wasn't fair. People didn't just transform overnight. There had been signs I'd chosen not to see. The increasingly frantic phone calls. The dark circles under her eyes every time I visited. The way she'd snapped at the kids over minor things. The fact that she'd stopped returning calls for days at a time. I'd told myself she was just stressed. That single motherhood was hard. That she'd figure it out. I hadn't realized she was drowning. And now she'd decided to swim away and leave me to rescue the children she'd pulled under with her. At 4:30, I went back inside. I checked on the kids, all still sleeping, though Owen was tossing restlessly. I made coffee in the French press Daniel had bought me for our 20th anniversary. I sat at the kitchen table and watched the sky slowly lighten through the window. At 6:15, Emma woke up crying. "I want Mommy. Where's Mommy?" I went to her, lifted her into my arms even though my back protested, and carried her to the rocking chair. "Mommy's not here right now, sweetheart, but I am. Grandma's here. Why did she leave us?" "I don't know, baby. I don't know." By 7, all 4 children were awake, disoriented and quiet. I made pancakes because I didn't know what else to do. I let them watch cartoons on my old television. I texted Cassidy 6 more times. No response. At 8:30, my phone finally buzzed, but it wasn't Cassidy. It was an email with the subject line, "School and medical records. Important." I opened it. There, in clinical detail, was everything I needed to know about enrolling and caring for 4 children I'd inherited overnight. No explanation, no apology, just information. And at the bottom, a single line. "Thank you, Mom. I know you'll take care of them. I'll be in touch soon." I stared at that message until the words blurred. Then I closed my phone, looked at 4 pairs of eyes watching me from the living room, and did the only thing I could do. I smiled. I said, "Okay. Who wants to help Grandma figure out where everyone's going to sleep?" And I took the first step into a life I'd never planned for and had no idea how to navigate. The pancakes burned. Emma spilled orange juice all over the floor. Owen asked 3 times when his mother was coming back, and each time I gave him an answer that satisfied neither of us. Lily washed her hands 7 times before 9 a.m. Noah didn't speak at all. Welcome to my new normal. Welcome to the morning after my daughter abandoned her children on my doorstep and disappeared into the night. Welcome to the moment I realized I was about to have to make an impossible choice. Enable my daughter's escape or force her to face what she'd done. I just didn't know yet how brutal that choice would become. The first week existed in a haze of survival mode that left no room for processing what had actually happened. I moved through those days like someone following an instruction manual written in a language I barely understood. Monday morning, I stood in the principal's office at Sweigel Elementary with all 4 children, filling out emergency enrollment forms, while the secretary, a kind woman named Beth with reading glasses on a beaded chain, gave me sympathetic looks that made my jaw tighten. Owen would be going to Stevens Middle School across town. The twins and Emma could stay together here at Sweigel, at least. Small mercies. And the mother will be unavailable for how long? Beth asked gently, pen hovering over the form. 2 months, I said, the words tasting like betrayal. Approximately. I see. She didn't see. How could she? And you have full temporary guardianship? Did I? Cassidy hadn't left paperwork. Just children. I'm working on the legal documentation. I lied. The twins started 3rd grade that Wednesday. Emma began kindergarten on Thursday, 3 months late into the school year, which the teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, assured me wasn't ideal, but they'd make it work. Owen's middle school schedule was a labyrinth of lockers and class periods I couldn't keep straight. He came home that first day and went straight to the guest room I'd hastily converted into a boys' room, shut the door, and didn't emerge until I threatened to eat all the pizza I'd ordered for dinner. By Friday, I'd learned that Lily had severe social anxiety that manifested in obsessive hand-washing, and that the school counselor wanted to meet with me. I'd learned that Noah hadn't spoken in school at all, not even to answer roll call, and his teacher was concerned. I'd learned that Emma had wet herself during circle time and came home with her unicorn backpack containing soiled clothes wrapped in a plastic grocery bag. I'd learned that I was 63 years old in every joint and muscle of my body, and that raising 4 children required energy I'd left behind decades ago. I'd also learned that Cassidy had blocked my number. I discovered this on Friday evening, after the kids were finally in bed. Owen in the guest room, the twins sharing Cassidy's old room that still had her debate team trophies on the shelves, Emma in the small study I'd converted by shoving my desk into the corner and assembling a toddler bed I'd bought from Target. I'd tried calling my daughter 17 times that week, 17 calls that went straight to a generic voicemail message. So I texted, "Cassidy, you need to unblock me. We need to discuss the children's needs. This is serious." The message showed as delivered, but not read, which meant she'd set up some kind of filter. My hands shook as I stared at my phone. She was actively avoiding me. This wasn't just impulsive escape. This was premeditated exile. I opened Instagram, something I barely used except to see photos of my friend Patricia's grandchildren. Cassidy's profile was public. I scrolled through her recent posts. There she was, my daughter, on a pristine beach, cocktail in hand, sunset behind her. Caption, "Finally breathing again. Sometimes you have to choose yourself." Self-care. Healing. New beginnings. The post had 63 likes. Acquaintances from her old marketing job commenting with fire emojis and, "You deserve this, queen." Nobody seemed to know or care that she'd abandoned 4 children to achieve this enlightenment. The next photo, Cassidy at a resort pool, hair wet, smile radiant. Day 4 of finding myself. Learning that it's okay to put your oxygen mask on first. Mental health matters. Self-love. I felt something cold and hard crystallize in my chest. Not quite anger yet. More like the moment before anger, when your body is still deciding whether to fight or shut down. I clicked through to her stories. A video of her at a beach bar, laughing with people I didn't recognize. Another of her doing yoga at sunrise. A boomerang of her jumping into a pool. Not a single mention of her children. I closed the app before I could throw my phone across the room. Saturday brought its own special chaos. Emma woke up at 5:47 a.m., crying for her mother. I brought her into my bed, where she fitfully dozed against me until Owen started making noise in the kitchen at 7. When I went downstairs, I found him attempting to make scrambled eggs and instead creating a disaster zone of broken shells and spilled milk. "I was trying to help," he said defensively when he saw my face. "I know. Thank you." I surveyed the damage. "How about you set the table instead, and I'll finish the eggs?" He nodded, shoulders hunched again in that way that made me want to find Cassidy and shake her until her teeth rattled. Lily appeared in the doorway, already dressed, her hands red and chapped. "Can I wash the dishes, Grandma?" "After breakfast, sweetheart." "But they're dirty. They need to be washed now." I recognized the edge of panic in her voice. "Tell you what, you can rinse them and put them in the sink and we'll properly wash them after we eat. Does that work?" She considered this, rubbing her palms together. Okay, that works." Noah trailed in behind her, silent as always, and sat at the table. He'd brought his iPad, some game with bright colors and aggressive sound effects. No screens at breakfast. I said automatically, then immediately wondered if that was a rule Cassidy enforced. Maybe I should let him have the iPad. Maybe structure was less important than avoiding meltdowns. He looked at me with those hollow eyes and set the iPad down without argument. Somehow that was worse than if he'd fought me on it. Emma wandered in wearing mismatched pajamas and carrying Mr. Trunks. I'm not hungry. You need to eat something. I want the kind of waffles Mommy makes. The ones from the freezer. We don't have those right now. We have eggs and toast. Her face crumpled. I don't like eggs. Mommy knows I don't like eggs. Well, Mommy's not here, Owen said sharply, and Emma started crying. Owen, I said. What? It's true. She's not here. She's in Mexico posting bikini photos while we're stuck. He caught himself, jaw clenching again. Forget it. I served breakfast to 4 miserable children, and we ate in near silence, broken only by Emma's sniffles and the scrape of forks on plates. This was my life now. This was every morning stretching ahead of me for 2 months, if Cassidy even came back in 2 months. That afternoon, I took them to the grocery store because we were out of everything. It was a catastrophe. Emma wanted Lucky Charms. I said no. She threw a tantrum in the cereal aisle while other shoppers gave me judgmental looks. Lily needed to use the bathroom 4 times. Noah wandered away, and I found him in the toy section, staring at a display of action figures with such longing it broke my heart. When I told Owen to help me load groceries into the cart, he snapped, "I'm not your servant," and stalked off toward the pharmacy section. By the time we got home, I was ready to collapse. Instead, I put away groceries, made lunch, refereed 3 arguments, and discovered that someone, probably Emma, had drawn on my living room wall with purple crayon. Sunday, I took them to church. This was a mistake. Emma got scared during the sermon and cried. Noah fell asleep. Lily kept asking to wash her hands in the bathroom. Owen refused to take communion and sat with his arms crossed, radiating hostility. After the service, when Patricia cornered me to ask about my unexpected visitors, I smiled tightly and said everything was fine, actually. And no, I couldn't make book club this Thursday because I was a little busy. But we're discussing Demon Copperhead, Patricia said, disappointed. You picked it. I'll read it on my own, I said, shepherding 4 children toward the parking lot before anyone else could ask questions I didn't want to answer. That evening, after the kids were in bed, I sat down with my laptop and did something I'd been avoiding all week. I looked up legal guardianship requirements in Oregon. I read articles about parental abandonment. I learned that what Cassidy had done wasn't technically illegal unless she'd been gone more than 30 days without contact or support. She'd left them with family. She'd sent their records. Legally, this was a gray area. Morally, it was black and white. I tried calling her again. Blocked. I sent an email. Cassidy, Emma wet the bed 3 times this week. Lily's anxiety is getting worse. Noah won't speak. Owen is angry at everyone. They need their mother. Please call me. No response. By Monday of week 2, I'd established something resembling a routine. Wake up at 6, get Emma dressed because she couldn't manage snaps or buttons yet, make breakfast, pack 4 lunches, drive Owen to Stevens Middle, then circle back to Sweegle for the younger 3. Come home, do laundry because there was always laundry. Try to work on the quilting project I'd abandoned. Give up on the quilting project. Pick up Emma at 2:30. Pick up the twins at 3:15. Pick up Owen at 3:45. Navigate homework battles. Make dinner. Manage showers and teeth brushing. Read Emma 3 stories. Separate the twins when they started fighting. Knock on Owen's door to make sure he was still alive. Fall into bed at 11. Wake up at 2 when Emma had a nightmare. Repeat. I canceled my library shift. I stopped going to my book club. I let the rose garden go completely to seed. My friend Janet called to see if I wanted to go to the new exhibit at the Hallie Ford Museum, and I had to say no because I couldn't leave 4 children alone for 3 hours. My life had been erased and replaced with someone else's. And still, Cassidy posted photos from Cancun. Still, she shared inspirational quotes about self-care and setting boundaries. Still, she ignored every attempt I made to contact her. On Wednesday of week 2, I got a call from Sweegle Elementary. Lily had a panic attack during recess and locked herself in the bathroom, washing her hands until they bled. The school nurse had bandaged them, but they wanted me to pick her up early and, perhaps, consider outside counseling services. I sat in the nurse's office with Lily curled against me, her hands wrapped in white gauze, and felt something inside me shift. Not anger yet. Still not anger, but getting closer. Do you have insurance information for the children? the nurse asked kindly. For mental health services? I'll figure it out, I said. That night, after everyone was asleep, I opened my laptop and started researching child therapists in Salem who took OHP, Oregon Health Plan, because I'd discovered that Cassidy's insurance through her sporadic marketing contracts had lapsed 3 months ago. Another thing she hadn't mentioned. I found a therapist named Dr. Sarah Chen who specialized in childhood anxiety and trauma. Her next available appointment was 3 weeks out. I booked it anyway. Then I did something I'd been contemplating all week. I logged into my bank account. The joint account I'd maintained with Cassidy since Daniel died. The account I'd quietly been depositing money into each month. My widow's pension from Daniel's federal job, plus the modest income from the rental property we owned in Eugene. Money I'd been setting aside as a safety net for my daughter because I worried about her unstable income, about her raising 4 kids alone, about her life spiraling. The account had $23,847 in it. Cassidy had never asked about this money. I'd never told her the full amount. In my mind, it was emergency funds, for car repairs or medical bills or keeping the lights on, for real emergencies, not for resort vacations while your children suffered. I opened a new savings account in my name only. I transferred every dollar. Then I called the bank's customer service line, blessedly still open until 9 p.m., and requested that Cassidy's debit card be deactivated. I need to verify. Is this a case of suspected fraud? The representative asked. No, I said. I'm the primary account holder. I'm removing an authorized user. Okay, I can process that. The card will be deactivated within 2 hours. Thank you. I hung up and sat in the dark kitchen, my heart pounding. What I'd just done felt both inevitable and irreversible. I'd crossed a line. I'd weaponized money against my own daughter. But she'd weaponized her children against me first, hadn't she? I waited. 2 hours became 3, became 4. I couldn't sleep. I sat in Daniel's rocking chair on the front porch, wrapped in a quilt, watching Cottage Street under the streetlights. At 1:17 a.m., my phone exploded. 15 missed calls in 3 minutes, all from a Mexican number. Then the text started. What the hell did you do? My card was declined at dinner at the hotel restaurant. Do you know how embarrassing that was? Call me right now. I let the phone buzz. Let her panic settle into the same cold fear her children had been living with for 2 weeks. Then, when the calls finally stopped coming, I called her back. She answered on the first ring. What the hell did you do? Her voice was shrill, panicked, nothing like the serene woman in those Instagram photos. I removed your access to the joint account, I said calmly. The account I've been funding with my pension. That's my money too. Actually, it's not. It's my money that I was generously sharing with you. Money I was setting aside for your children's needs. But you're not taking care of your children, so I've decided to allocate it differently. You can't just, Mom, I'm in another country. I need that card. How am I supposed to? You're a grown woman. Figure it out. Silence. Then, I can't believe you're doing this. I can't believe you'd punish me for taking care of my mental health. Taking care of your mental health? The words came out sharper than I intended. Cassidy, do you know what I've been doing for the last 2 weeks? I know you have the kids, and I'm grateful. No, let me tell you what I've been doing. I've been holding Emma while she cries for you at 2 a.m. I've been explaining to Owen's teachers why he's failing 3 classes. I've been bandaging Lily's hands because she washed them until they bled from anxiety. I've been sitting across from Noah at breakfast watching him fade away because he won't speak to anyone. That's what I've been doing. I left them with family. I didn't abandon them on the street. You abandoned them on my doorstep at midnight with no warning and disappeared to Mexico. How is that different? Her voice cracked. You don't understand. You don't know what it's like to be drowning, to feel like you're failing at everything, to wake up every day and want to just stop, to not exist as mom for 5 goddamn minutes. And there it was, the raw truth underneath the Instagram filters and inspirational quotes. So you ran, I said quietly. You left your children to drown instead. I left them with you because I knew you'd take care of them. Because you're good at this and I'm not. I'm a terrible mother, okay? Is that what you want to hear? No, Cassidy. I want to hear that you're coming home. I want to hear that you understand what you've done to those kids. I can't come home yet. I'm not ready. I'm just starting to feel like myself again. Then you'll need to find a way to feel like yourself without access to my bank account. This is unbelievable. You're my mother. You're supposed to support me. I am supporting you, I interrupted. I'm supporting you by not enabling you to run away from your responsibilities while 4 children suffer. I'm supporting you by forcing you to face what you've done instead of posting sunshine and yoga poses like your life is a wellness retreat. You're controlling me, like you always have. Nothing I do is ever good enough for you. That's not fair, and you know it. Fair? She laughed, bitter and sharp. You want to talk about fair? You've judged every choice I've made since I was 18. The wrong college, the wrong major. Marcus was wrong, even though you were right about that one. Congratulations. Moving to Salem instead of Portland was wrong. Having 4 kids instead of 1 or 2 was wrong. Everything I am is somehow not enough for perfect Margaret Holloway, who did everything right and married the perfect man and lived in the perfect house. Your father died, I said, and my voice broke. The perfect man died and left me alone, and I had to figure out how to keep living. Just like you have to figure out how to keep being a mother, even when it's hard. Silence stretched between us, filled with years of things unsaid. I had postpartum depression after Emma, Cassidy finally whispered. Did you know that? Severe. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. I had intrusive thoughts about terrible things happening to her. And I didn't tell anyone because I knew what you'd think. That I couldn't handle it. That I'd made another wrong choice. My throat tightened. Oh, honey. And Marcus leaving made it worse. And Dad dying made it worse. And every day I woke up feeling like I was failing 4 people who needed me to be okay. And I wasn't okay. And I couldn't fake it anymore. So yes, I ran. Because staying meant falling apart completely. And I thought at least if I could just have some space to breathe, maybe I could come back as someone who doesn't want to disappear. I closed my eyes. Why didn't you tell me you were struggling? Because you would have tried to fix it. Because you would have swooped in and taken over, and I would have felt like even more of a failure. Because I needed to fix myself, not have you do it for me. So instead, you left them with me at midnight and vanished to Mexico. That was your solution. It was the only solution I could see. I'm sorry it wasn't neat enough for you. The anger I'd been holding back finally surged through me. You want to know something, Cassidy? I don't give a damn about neat. I care that your 12-year-old son thinks he's unlovable because both his parents abandoned him. I care that your 9-year-old daughter is hurting herself because she's so anxious. I care that your other 9-year-old has stopped speaking entirely. I care that your baby can't make it through a night without wetting the bed because she's terrified you're never coming back. No, you need to hear this. You say you needed space to heal. Fine. But you didn't just take space. You transferred your trauma directly onto 4 children who didn't ask to be born and didn't ask for you to fall apart. And now they're falling apart, and I'm the one piecing them back together while you drink margaritas and post about finding yourself. I didn't know what else to do. She was crying now, ugly sobbing that made her words barely intelligible. I didn't know. I was so tired, Mom. I'm still so tired. Then come home tired. Come home broken. Come home whatever you are. But come home to your children. I can't. Not yet. Please don't make me come back yet. I can't make you do anything. You're an adult. But I can stop funding your escape. So that's it? You're just going to cut me off until I do what you want? I'm going to keep your children safe and fed and clothed, which is apparently more than their mother is willing to do right now. When you're ready to actually be their mother again, we can talk about the rest. You don't understand. You're right. I don't understand how you can live with yourself right now. Goodbye, Cassidy. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I sat there in the dark, in Daniel's chair, and finally let myself cry. Not for me, for 4 children upstairs who deserved better than this. For my daughter who was drowning and had decided to take her kids down with her. For the impossibility of a situation where everyone was hurt and no one was right. At 3:30 a.m., another text came through. I hate you right now, I typed back. That's okay. I'm not particularly fond of you either. But I love you, and I love those kids. So figure your shit out and come home. No response. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed in the rocking chair, watching the sky slowly lighten, smelling the first hints of coffee from the bakery next door, listening to the house creak and settle around me. At 5:47, right on schedule, I heard Emma's door open, her footsteps on the stairs. She appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes, Mr. Trunks dragging behind her. Grandma? Why are you out here? Just thinking, sweetheart. About Mommy? Yes. She climbed into my lap, warm and heavy and real. Is she coming back? I could have lied, Should have, maybe. Instead, I said, I don't know yet, baby, but you're safe here. I promise you're safe. Okay. She tucked her head under my chin. Can we have waffles for breakfast? The freezer kind? I'll buy them today. Okay. She fell back asleep against me, and I held her as the street slowly came alive with morning. A jogger passed. Someone walking a dog. The newspaper delivery. Regular people living regular lives while mine had been turned inside out. At 7, when I heard Owen starting to move around upstairs, I carried Emma back to her bed and started the coffee. I pulled out my phone and looked at Cassidy's last text. I hate you right now. I typed back, come home anyway. Then I started making breakfast for 4 children who needed me, whether I was ready for them or not. The anger was still there, hot and solid. But underneath it, buried deep, was something else. Understanding, maybe. Or at least the beginning of it. Because I was tired too. And scared. And completely overwhelmed. The difference was I didn't have the option to run. These kids needed an adult. And right now, I was all they had. So I stayed. And waited to see if my daughter would do the same. Cassidy came back on a Tuesday. Not because she wanted to. Not because she'd found herself or healed or any of the other things her Instagram posts had promised. She came back because she'd run out of money, burned through the credit card she'd maxed out before I froze the account, and finally hit the wall that comes when you can't outrun your own life anymore. She showed up at my door at 4:17 in the afternoon, thinner than when she'd left, with dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. She had 1 suitcase and a duffel bag. Her hair was in a messy bun. She wore leggings and an oversized sweatshirt that said Cancun across the front in cheerful lettering that felt obscene given the circumstances. I was in the kitchen when I heard the key in the lock. She still had her key, of course. And then her voice, tentative and small. Mom? I turned off the stove where I'd been making spaghetti sauce, wiped my hands on a dish towel, walked into the living room where my daughter stood like a stranger in the house where she'd grown up. They're not home yet, I said. I have to pick up Emma in 20 minutes. Okay. She set down her bags, looked around the room, at the fort made of couch cushions that the twins had built last weekend, and I hadn't had the heart to take down, at Owen's algebra textbook abandoned on the coffee table, at Emma's collection of rocks organized by size on the windowsill. Evidence of the life she'd missed. How are they? How do you think they are? She flinched. That's fair. Is it? I heard the edge in my voice and didn't try to soften it. I'm not sure you've earned fair yet. Mom. 3 weeks, Cassidy. You've been gone 3 weeks. Do you know what 3 weeks feels like to a 5-year-old? It's an eternity. Emma asks me every single morning if today is the day you're coming back. And I haven't known what to tell her because you wouldn't answer my calls or emails or anything except to text that you hate me. I don't hate you. She said it quietly, looking at the floor. I was angry and scared. And you cutting off my money was exactly what you needed. Don't pretend otherwise. She looked up then, and I saw it in her face. The thing I'd been hoping to see and dreading in equal measure. Shame. Real, bone-deep shame that couldn't be filtered or captioned away. You're right, she said, and her voice cracked. You were right. About all of it. I ran away from my kids like a coward, and I told myself it was self-care when it was just abandonment. And I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so fucking sorry. I wanted to stay angry. Wanted to hold on to the righteous fury that had sustained me through 3 weeks of single-handedly raising 4 traumatized children. But looking at my daughter, really looking at her, I saw what I'd been too angry to see before. She wasn't the carefree woman from those Instagram photos. She was barely holding herself together, and she'd probably been barely holding herself together for months. Maybe years. Sit down, I said finally. We need to talk before they get home. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd had 1,000 conversations throughout her life, where I'd helped her with homework and listened to her heartbreaks and told her the truth about Santa Claus when she was 8 and already suspicious, where Daniel had given her the sex talk while I hid in the other room, too mortified to participate, where she'd told us she was pregnant with Owen at 19, terrified we'd be disappointed. I poured us both coffee. She wrapped her hands around the mug like she was cold, even though the house was warm. I had my first panic attack when Emma was 3 months old, she began, not looking at me. I was home alone with all 4 of them. Marcus had moved out by then. Owen was supposed to be watching the twins, but they got into a fight and Lily hit her head on the coffee table, Not badly, just a bump. But she was screaming. Noah was screaming because Lily was screaming. Emma was screaming because she was hungry. And I just froze. I stood in the middle of the living room and couldn't move, couldn't breathe, felt like I was dying. I stayed quiet, let her talk. It got worse after Dad died. Not right away, but gradually. Like something inside me just gave up. Marcus had been gone for a year by then, and he'd stopped sending child support. Money was tight. The kids were getting older and more complicated. Emma still wasn't sleeping through the night. And every morning I'd wake up and think, I can't do this for one more day. But I did. Day after day after day. Until I couldn't anymore. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, gentler now. Because you would have judged me. Because you did everything right. Married the right person. Had one child you could actually handle. Never struggled the way I struggled. And I couldn't stand the thought of you seeing me fail. Again. Cassidy, you weren't failing. Yes, I was. I am. I'm a terrible mother. You know it. I know it. Those kids definitely know it. That's not true. Really? She finally looked at me and her eyes were red and swollen. What kind of mother abandons her kids for 3 weeks? What kind of mother chooses a vacation over her own children? The kind who's drowning and doesn't know how to ask for help, I said quietly. She stared at me for a long moment. Then the tears came, ugly and genuine. Nothing like the composed woman in those beach photos. I don't know how to be their mother anymore. I don't think I ever did. Emma needs constant attention. The twins are so anxious all the time. Owen hates me, and I just keep failing them over and over, and I don't know how to stop. I reached across the table and took her hand. Then we figure it out together. But first, you need to understand something. Those kids have been through hell. Emma has nightmares every night. Lily hurt herself because her anxiety got so bad. Noah still isn't speaking. And Owen. I paused, remembering the look in my grandson's eyes. Owen feels abandoned by both his parents, and he's carrying that around like a weight that's going to crush him. You coming back isn't going to fix everything instantly. They're going to be angry. They're going to test you. And you're going to have to prove you're not going to leave again. I know. Do you? Because the first time it gets hard again, and it will get hard, you can't run. You can't decide it's too much and disappear to find yourself. You have to stay. I will. I promise I will. I need more than promises, Cassidy. I need you to actually do the work. Therapy. For you and for them. I've already found someone for Lily, but you all need it. And you need to be present. Actually present. Not checking your phone or posting on Instagram or mentally planning your next escape. She nodded, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. Okay, yes. I'll do whatever it takes. And one more thing. I squeezed her hand. You need to forgive yourself. Not right away and not before you've earned it. But eventually. Because those kids need a mother who believes she's capable of being one, not someone who's already decided she's failed. She looked at me with something like wonder. How are you not angrier at me? Oh, I'm furious, I said honestly. I'm so angry I could scream. But I'm also your mother, and I love you. And anger isn't going to fix this. Action will. We sat in silence for a moment. Then she said, I'm scared, Mom. What if they don't want me back? What if I've broken something that can't be fixed? Then you fix what you can and learn to live with the rest. That's what being a parent means. At 4:32, I had to leave to get Emma. Cassidy came with me, nervous and fidgeting in the passenger seat. We drove to Sweegle Elementary in silence, both of us preparing for what came next. Emma was standing with her teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, when we pulled up. She saw me first, started running toward the car with her unicorn backpack bouncing. Then she saw who was in the passenger seat. She stopped running, stood there in the pickup line, staring. Cassidy opened the door and stepped out. Hi, baby. Emma's face went through about 17 emotions in 3 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, hope, anger. Then she ran, not to Cassidy, but to me, wrapping herself around my legs and hiding her face. I want Grandma, she said, voice muffled against my jeans. Cassidy's face crumpled. Emma, sweetie. No, I want Grandma. You left. You left us. I know. I'm so sorry. I'm back now. I'm not leaving again. You said that before. Emma's voice was fierce despite her tears. You said you'd be back soon and you weren't. You're a liar. I knelt down and looked Emma in the eyes. Your mama made a big mistake. She knows that. But she's here now, and she wants to try to make it right. Can you give her a chance? Emma looked at me, then at Cassidy, then back at me. Will you still be here too? I'm not going anywhere. Promise. I promise. Emma considered this. Then slowly, she walked over to Cassidy and let herself be picked up. Cassidy held her like she was something precious and breakable, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, Cassidy whispered into Emma's hair. I'm so sorry, baby. Mama made a terrible choice, but I'm home now. I'm home. Emma didn't hug her back, but she didn't pull away either. It was a start. The twins' reactions were more complicated. Lily cried but let Cassidy hug her. Noah stared at his mother like she was a stranger, then turned and walked away. It took 20 minutes of gentle coaxing before he'd even come into the same room. Owen's reaction was the worst. He came home from middle school at 4:15, saw Cassidy sitting on the couch, and his face went completely blank. Not angry, not hurt, just empty. You're back, he said flatly. Yes, I'm back. Owen, I'm so cool. Whatever. I have homework. He started to walk toward the guest room. His room now. Owen, please. Can we talk? He stopped, turned around, and the look on his face made my chest ache. Talk? Like how we talked before you left? When you said you just needed a weekend? Or maybe we can talk like all those times I texted you and you didn't respond? Which kind of talking did you have in mind? Owen? You know what? Forget it. I'm done. You want to be back? Great. But don't expect me to pretend everything's fine. Don't expect me to forgive you just because you showed up with your suitcase and your sad face. You left us. You left me. Again. What do you mean again? Dad left. You left. Everyone leaves. So congratulations on being consistent, I guess. He went to his room and slammed the door. Cassidy started to follow, but I stopped her. Give him time. He's been holding that in for 3 weeks. He needs to be angry before he can be anything else. That first night was excruciating. Cassidy made dinner, spaghetti, the sauce I'd been making when she arrived, and we all sat around the table in tense silence. Emma sat between Cassidy and me, clearly torn. The twins picked at their food. Owen didn't come out of his room despite multiple requests. After dinner, Cassidy tried to help with homework and baths and bedtime routines. Emma let her read one story before demanding I read the other 2. Lily wanted Cassidy to help her pick out clothes for tomorrow, but only if I was in the room too. Noah still wouldn't speak to anyone. At 10:30, after everyone was finally in bed, Cassidy and I sat on the front porch. She was in Daniel's rocking chair. I'd offered it to her without thinking. The night was cold, and she'd wrapped herself in the quilt I kept out here. They hate me, she said quietly. They don't hate you. They're hurt. There's a difference. Owen does. You saw his face. Owen is 12 years old and processing abandonment from both his parents. He'll come around, but it's going to take time, and you're going to have to earn it. I don't know how. Yes, you do. You show up, every day. You do the small things. Pack lunches, sign permission slips, show up to soccer games. You prove through consistent action that you're not going anywhere. And eventually, they'll start to trust again. She was quiet for a long time. Then, thank you for taking them, for not giving up on me, for freezing my cards even though I hated you for it. You were right. I needed to hit bottom before I could start climbing back up. I wasn't sure I was right. I'm still not. But I knew I couldn't watch you run away from your life anymore. Did you ever want to run when Dad died? I thought about that. About the early days after Daniel's heart attack, when I'd wanted to crawl into bed and never get up. When the house felt too big and too empty and too full of memories that hurt to touch. Every day, I admitted, but I didn't have anywhere to run to. So I stayed. And eventually staying got easier. Does it get easier? Being their mother? I don't know. I haven't been their mother. I've been their temporary guardian, which is different. But being a parent? I looked at her. I think it gets different. Not easier, just different. You learn what battles to fight. You learn to forgive yourself for the mistakes. You learn that love isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up imperfect and trying anyway. She nodded, pulling the quilt tighter. I need to tell you something. About Cancun. I waited. I wasn't posting those happy photos because I was happy. I was posting them because I was trying to convince myself I'd made the right choice. Every sunset photo, every inspirational caption, it was all me trying to feel okay about what I'd done. And it didn't work. I felt worse every day. I'd see other families on the beach, mothers with their kids, and I'd have to leave because I couldn't breathe. The last week, I barely left my hotel room. Why didn't you come home sooner? Pride, fear, shame. Take your pick. I'd made this huge dramatic exit. How could I come crawling back after 2 weeks and admit I'd made a terrible mistake? So I stayed. And it got worse. And then you froze the cards, and I hated you. But also I was relieved. Because it gave me an excuse to come back that wasn't just me admitting defeat. Coming back isn't defeat, Cassidy. It's courage. She laughed bitterly. Doesn't feel like courage. It is, though. Running away was the easy choice. Staying is going to be the hard one. Every single day you're going to have to choose to stay. Choose to be present. Choose to do the work even when it's uncomfortable. That takes more courage than anything else. We sat in silence, the cold seeping through our clothes, the night settling around us. From somewhere down the street, I heard a dog barking. The wind moved through the bare maple trees. The smell of coffee from the bakery had long since faded, replaced by the clean scent of almost winter. I want to stay here for a while, Cassidy said finally. If that's okay. I don't think I can handle having them in my apartment right now. The place is too small, and too full of memories of everything falling apart. Can we do this together? Just until I'm more stable? I thought about my quiet life, my routines, my peace. All of it already shattered, but with the possibility of being shattered further if Cassidy stayed. Yes, I said, but with conditions. You take the master bedroom. I'll move to the guest room. You're their mother. You need to be primary. I'm backup. We find a family therapist. You get individual therapy. And you commit to at least 6 months. No running when it gets hard. 6 months? Minimum. These kids need stability. They need to know you're serious. So 6 months, and then we reassess. She was quiet for a long time. Then, okay, 6 months. I can do 6 months. Can you? I have to. What other choice do I have? You always have choices, Cassidy. You could run again. You could give up. You could decide this is too hard and walk away. There are always choices. What I need to know is whether you're choosing them, your children. Not because you're trapped or because I'm forcing you, but because you actually want to be their mother. I do want to be their mother. I just don't know how to be a good one. Then we'll figure it out. Together. The next few weeks were brutal. Owen barely spoke to Cassidy. Emma had a regression in the potty training she'd mostly mastered. Multiple accidents at school, tears every night. Lily's hand-washing got worse before it got better. Noah maintained his silence. But slowly, so slowly I almost didn't notice at first, things began to shift. Cassidy started therapy twice a week with Dr. Sarah Chen, the same therapist I'd found for Lily. We started family sessions. It was uncomfortable and painful, and there were sessions where everyone cried, but we showed up. Cassidy took over the morning routine. Not perfectly. She overslept twice in the first week, forgot to sign permission slips, burned breakfast more than once. But she was there. She was trying. She went to Owen's parent-teacher conference and learned that he was failing math. Instead of lecturing him, she hired a tutor. She sat with him while he did homework, not helping, but just being present. He didn't thank her. But he stopped slamming doors. She took Emma to her kindergarten Donuts with Mom event. Emma held her hand the whole time. Small victories. The twins slowly began to relax. Lily's therapy was helping. She taught Cassidy the grounding techniques Dr. Chen had given her, and on bad anxiety days, they'd do them together. Noah started speaking again. Not a lot, just a few words here and there, but words nonetheless. I watched my daughter slowly become a mother again. Not the perfect mother she'd wanted to be. Not the Instagram version with the filtered photos and inspirational quotes, but a real mother. One who showed up tired and imperfect, and trying. 6 weeks after Cassidy came home on a Saturday morning, I found her and Owen in the kitchen together. He was teaching her how to make the scrambled eggs he'd learned from YouTube. They weren't talking about anything important, just eggs and seasoning and whether butter or oil was better for the pan. But they were talking. They were in the same room, doing something together, and it was normal. That's when I knew we were going to be okay. Not fixed, not healed, but okay. By month 3, we'd established something that almost resembled normal. Cassidy had found a part-time remote job doing social media management for a Portland nonprofit. She worked while the kids were in school, was present in the afternoons and evenings. I'd returned to my library shift on Tuesdays. We'd figured out a system. Some days were still hard. Emma had nightmares. Owen had moments where he retreated back into anger. Lily had panic attacks. Noah had days where he didn't speak. Cassidy had days where I could see the running instinct flicker across her face. But she stayed. Every time, she stayed. On a Tuesday evening in May, almost 4 months after Cassidy first came back, I found her sitting on the front porch in Daniel's rocking chair. The maple trees had leafed out, creating a canopy of green over Cottage Street. The smell of coffee from the bakery mixed with the scent of roses from the garden I'd finally gotten back to tending. I sat down in the chair next to her, the one I'd brought out to match Daniel's. "They're doing better," she said quietly. "They are. So are you." "Am I?" She looked at me, and I saw something in her face I hadn't seen in a long time. Not happiness exactly, but peace. Or at least the beginning of it. Some days I still want to run. Not like before, not to Mexico, but just away. To somewhere I don't have to be responsible for 4 people's entire emotional well-being. That's normal. Every parent feels that way sometimes. Did you? With me? Of course. There were days when you were a teenager that I fantasized about just getting in the car and driving. Just to have silence. Just to be Margaret instead of Mom for a few hours. Did you ever do it? Once. I drove to the coast, sat in the car watching the ocean for 3 hours, then came home. Daniel had ordered pizza, and you hadn't even noticed I was gone longer than usual. I was furious and relieved in equal measure. She laughed, a real laugh. I love that story. It makes you seem human. I am human, Cassidy. I've never been anything else. I think that's what you didn't see growing up. You saw me as having all the answers, being perfect, never struggling. But I struggled. I just didn't let you see it because I thought that was what good mothers did. Maybe that was my problem too, trying to be perfect instead of just being present. Maybe. We sat in comfortable silence. From inside, I could hear the sounds of the kids. Lily practicing piano, Noah laughing at something on his iPad, Emma singing to herself. Normal sounds, beautiful sounds. "Thank you, Mom," Cassidy said quietly, "for not giving up on me, for forcing me to come back, for loving me even when I didn't deserve it. You always deserved it. You just couldn't see it. I see it now. Finally." That night, after the kids were in bed, I stood in the doorway of what used to be my bedroom and watched Cassidy reading to Emma. Emma was curled against her mother, sucking her thumb, a habit we were working on breaking, completely relaxed in a way she hadn't been for months. Cassidy's voice was soft and steady, reading Where the Wild Things Are for probably the 1,000th time. When the story ended, Emma looked up at her mother and said, "Mama, you're not going to leave again, right?" "No, baby, I'm not leaving again." "Promise?" "I promise." "Okay." Emma snuggled deeper into Cassidy's arms. "I love you, Mama." "I love you too, baby. So much." I turned away before they could see the tears in my eyes. I went to my room, the guest room that had become mine, and sat on the bed. I picked up the photo of Daniel I kept on the nightstand, the one from our last vacation at Cannon Beach, before the heart attack, before everything changed. "We did okay," I told him. "Not perfect, but okay. She's going to be all right. They're all going to be all right." The photo didn't respond, obviously, but I felt it anyway. His presence, his approval, his love. He'd always believed Cassidy would figure it out. He'd always had more faith than I did. Maybe that was my lesson in all this. Faith. Not the religious kind necessarily, though I'd rediscovered some of that sitting in church pews with 4 fidgeting children. But faith in resilience. Faith that people could break and heal and grow. Faith that love, real love, wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, especially when it was hard. 6 months turned into 8, then 10. Cassidy and the kids moved back to her apartment. Bigger now, a 3-bedroom she could afford with her new job and my help with rent. But they came over for dinner twice a week. The kids spent weekends with me sometimes. Owen started coming over on his own just to hang out, to escape his siblings, to ask me about his grandfather. Life found a new rhythm. Different from before, but good. The kind of good that comes from surviving something hard and coming out changed but intact. A year after Cassidy first came home, on a Tuesday in February, exactly 1 year after she'd shown up at midnight with 4 kids and a suitcase, she invited me over for dinner. When I arrived, I found my 4 grandchildren working together to make spaghetti. Owen was managing the sauce. The twins were setting the table. Emma was arranging breadsticks in a basket with intense concentration. "What's all this?" I asked. "It's our anniversary," Emma announced proudly. "Of when we came to live with you and everything got bad but then got better." We wanted to say thank you, Lily added, for taking care of us when Mom couldn't. Cassidy appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Our eyes met across the room, and I saw everything in her face: gratitude, regret, love, hope. Thank you, Mom, she said simply. We sat around her small dining table, too small really for 6 people, everyone a bit squished, and ate spaghetti with too much garlic and breadsticks that were slightly burnt. Emma spilled her milk. The twins argued about whose elbow was taking up more space. Owen complained about the sauce being too chunky. It was chaotic and imperfect and loud. It was beautiful. After dinner, as I was getting ready to leave, Cassidy walked me to my car. I'm going back to school, she told me. Online, part-time. Dr. Chen thinks I should finish my degree. Maybe do something in counseling. Help other parents who are struggling the way I struggled. That's wonderful. I'm terrified, she admitted, but also excited. Is that weird? No, that's growth. She hugged me then, tight and fierce. I love you, Mom. Even when I hated you for freezing my cards, I loved you. You saved me. You saved all of us. You saved yourself, I told her. I just made it harder for you to run. You did the work of coming back. I drove home through familiar streets, past the bakery and the library and all the landmarks of my life. When I pulled up to my house, quiet now, empty but not lonely, I sat in the car for a moment and thought about everything that had happened in the past year. My daughter had abandoned her children. I'd frozen her bank account and forced her hand. We'd had the worst fight of our lives. She'd come home broken and ashamed. And slowly, painfully, we'd all figured out how to be a family again. Not the family we'd been before. Something different. Something harder won, but maybe stronger for it. I went inside and made myself tea. I sat in Daniel's rocking chair, back on my porch where it belonged, and watched the street settle into evening. The maple trees swayed. The scent of roses drifted from the garden. The coffee shop had closed for the day. Everything was quiet and still and mine again. But tomorrow, Emma had a dentist appointment, and Cassidy needed me to take her because she had a work meeting. Owen wanted help with a history project. The twins had a piano recital on Saturday. Tomorrow, I'd be needed again, and I'd show up. Because that's what we do. We show up for the people we love, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. My phone buzzed. A text from Cassidy. Forgot to tell you. Emma drew you a picture. She made me promise to bring it over tomorrow. Apparently, it's very important. Prepare yourself for a lot of purple crayon. I smiled and texted back, can't wait. And I meant it. Because this messy, complicated, imperfect life was exactly where I was supposed to be. Not the quiet solitude I'd planned for my late 50s. Something better. Something real. The end. My daughter left at midnight and dropped off my 4 grandkids. When she called from her trip, I said, "Your cards won't work for a reason.